Hi everyone. Through the years I've purchased a number of guidebooks, and I've discovered that the right guidebook can really add to one's enjoyment of a particular location. So today what I would like to do is I would like to talk to you about some of the guidebooks that I've purchased about the Holy Land. And then I would like to make a suggestion to you for a guidebook that I think might help you out. Now, of course, guidebooks come in all shapes and sizes. And when one typically thinks of a guidebook, they typically think of a popular series like this from Frommer's. And books of this nature cover a lot of details. They cover not only information about the particular location, the sites you're going to see, but they also cover a great deal of information concerning the various hotels and restaurants and things of that nature. And then there are those guidebooks that help you to understand the culture so that you respond in a culturally appropriate fashion when you're visiting a different country. And of course, there are these guidebooks that I really like. Some of them are better than others, but they're the Culture Shock series. And you see I've got a couple of them here, one from Thailand and one from India. I've discovered that those have been helpful in the past for me to understand, again, what is appropriate and what's not in a particular country. I have this other book here on Chinese business etiquette that attempts to do the same thing. It just simply helps you to understand what is appropriate and what it's not in the Chinese culture. But the books I want to talk to you today aren't really so much about the culture, and they're not really about the hotels and the restaurants and things of that nature. They're about the Holy Land, the various sites and the spiritual significance that those sites have to us. In short, they're a lot like the videos that we're putting together. They help us to understand the sites that we're going to be visiting. Now, when I started preparing for this trip, I purchased a number of different guidebooks in order to help me to learn more about Israel prior to our trip. And of course, I use a lot of different dictionaries and encyclopedias and a lot of resources and commentaries and atlases and maps and things to help as well. But I find these little books to be good to read and study to get a quick understanding of the particular sites in Israel. Now, I've got three here that I want to talk to you about and hopefully to give you some guidance so that you don't have to purchase all the books like I did. Of course, you don't have to purchase any books, but if you were to decide to, I've got a recommendation for you. And the first book I want to talk to you about is this one. It's simply called The Christian Traveler's Guide to the Holy Land, and it's written by Charles Dyer. This book has been out for a number of years, and it's gone through various editions. The problem with this book is that it tries to cover too much ground. It talks not only about Israel, but it also talks about Jordan and Egypt and Greece and other locations as well. As such, it doesn't really give a lot of detail to each individual location. It spends a lot of time talking about preparatory stuff, about how you can prepare for the trip, and that's all good information. But when it comes down to sharing the significance of the individual sites, it comes up, in my mind, just a little bit short. Some of the passages in there are very short indeed. So it's a good, very basic book that just gives you a very brief explanation of the various sites, but that's about all you can expect from it. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have this book. It's called The Holy Land, an Oxford Archaeological Guide by Jerome Murphy O'Connor. It's written by a Catholic priest, and it goes into a lot more detail than this book. And you can probably tell that simply by the thickness of the books. But this is a very good book. It does discuss the archaeological significance of the sites that we'll be visiting, but this book is not as accessible as some of the others. And what I mean by that is you really need to have a pretty good understanding of the history and the geography of the area that we're going to be visiting. And you need to understand a little bit about some of the archaeological terms that he's going to be using in here as well. Nevertheless, if you're willing to put forth the work, this is a good book that I would recommend, but I wouldn't recommend it as your primary book, only if you want to dig in a lot deeper. The third book is actually the book that I would recommend, and I've really enjoyed this book. It's called The Holy Land for Christian Travelers by John A. Beck. You can pick it up in various places for $9, $10, $12. It's not that expensive. It is significantly smaller. It's a lot lighter. It would be easier for you to pack in a checked bag or a carry-on bag to take around with you while you're in the country of Israel. It's full color. It's very attractive. It shares a lot of information. It's got good illustrations. It's got a few maps here and there. It has scriptural references, and it goes into a lot more detail about the various sites that we'll be visiting. Instead of just having a short little paragraph about each site, it may have a 2 to 3 page description, again, depending on the individual site. But I find it to be a good book. It doesn't cover hotels, and it doesn't cover restaurants, and it doesn't cover a lot of information about how to prepare for the trip, but it's really good about covering the individual sites. And again, it's a small book. It's not that heavy. It's inexpensive, and I found it to be one of my favorites out of the ones that I've purchased. Nevertheless, I thought this might be helpful to you, and I hope that you're getting excited for our trip to the Holy Land. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to answer them to the very best of my ability. Nevertheless, I hope you're having a great day. Look forward to talking to you again soon.